Israeli authorities arrest Jerusalem bombing suspect.
The suspect identifies as a member of the Islamic State group. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Yalago Flores. This is Matanang Agila International. Now for the headlines. Marcos Jr. state visit to China aims to boost Philippines' economic recovery. Department of Health dispels public fear over BR7 Omicron variant. Government receives more than 600 complaints on first day of SIM card registration. U.S. officials set up recovery stage for victims of winter storm. And U.S. President Joe Biden says ending controversial Title 42 is overdue. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will push through with his state visit to China scheduled for January 3. This is despite calls for reconsideration following another surge of COVID-19 cases in China. Aside from the economic agenda, the president is expected to discuss with President Xi Jinping the issue of the South China Sea. The president emphasized the need for a peaceful resolution on the territorial dispute between the claimant countries. Meanwhile, China has issued COVID-19 protocols for the upcoming state visit. Delegates are required to be fully vaccinated with a booster dose and undergo 2 RT-PCR tests. Health officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergeire said the president's visit to China is important for the economy and must not be hampered by the threats of COVID-19. Reports say the current COVID-19 situation in China is unprecedented, with daily infections reaching to more than 1 million. A Chinese respiratory expert said the new surge of COVID-19 cases in China is caused by BA5A and BA5.2.1.7, a mutant strain of BA5.2 Omicron subvariant.
A business group is optimistic that President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s upcoming state visit to China this January will boost the country's economic recovery. Vic Sumintak with the details.
The Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry Incorporated, or FFCCCII, expressed optimism for President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s scheduled state visit to China this January 3. The group's president, Dr. Henry Lim Bon Leong, said a majority of Filipino-Chinese businessmen will be part of the president's delegation. Despite threats of a world economic recession, Dr. Leong said China remains to be the strongest economic and trading partner of the Philippines. He added that President Marcos' visit to China is a good opportunity for high-level diplomacy to pursue business and economic cooperation agenda with Beijing.
We believe that this historic state visit is very important to the growth potentials of our Philippine economy because China is our most important economic trade partner, the world's emerging new economic superpower, and our neighbor.
Dr. Leong said the Philippines has a positive economic and demographic fundamentals to promote its interests in China and the rest of Asia. Vic Sumintak for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Health says the public should not worry with the detection of the new BF7 Omicron subvariant in the country, as long as they adhere to health protocols and protect themselves from the virus. Celine Dorado reports.
The Department of Health allays fears of the public with the detection of new BF.7 Omicron subvariant in the country. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergere told reporters that although BF.7 is more transmissible and immune evasive, there is no evidence yet to prove that it causes severe infections. BF.7 is a sublineage of Omicron subvariant BA.5.
Pero wala pa ring ebidensya na nagsasabi na itong BF.7 na to ay mas nagpo-cause ng severe or critical infections.
Vergere admits the coronavirus is here to stay and would continue mutation. She adds that the public should focus on protecting themselves through vaccination and adhere to the minimum health standards.
Sa lahat ng sub-variants na pumasok dito, it's not supposed to be a concern, but it's supposed to be something that we be cautious on, something that we become more vigilant. Because ito pong mga variants na to, hindi to matatapos because we are living with the virus already. The virus is here to stay.
To date, the country has detected 4 cases of BF.7 Omicron subvariant. BF.7 has caused the new surge of COVID-19 cases in China. But despite this, Vergere says the government is not considering imposing another generalized lockdown. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The death toll from floods in the Philippines has risen to 25, according to officials. Storms are expected to dump more rain over the hardest hit southern and central regions. Last December 25, around 81,000 people were forced to go to evacuation centers as heavy rain submerged rural villages, towns, and highways in the province of Misamis Occidental on the southern island of Mindanao. A recent report from the National Disaster Agency says 26 people are missing while 9 are injured. The disaster agency confirms ongoing relief efforts to help people in areas hard hit by flooding. Officials say they are set to conduct an aerial surveillance over Misamis Occidental Wednesday to assess the extent of the damage.
The first day of SIM card registration was marred by glitches and technical difficulties. More than 600 complaints and concerns were filed before the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordination Center. Mian Corvera has the details.
The Cybercrime Investigation and Coordination Center received more than 600 complaints and other concerns on the first day of SIM card registration. CICC is the agency probing online scam cases. It was the first to establish a response center to assist the public with the online SIM registration. CICC Executive Director Alex Ramos said most of the complaints they received included failure to access the link provided by the telcos, improper registration process, and failure to upload a selfie photo or identification card as required for online registration. Ramos said CICC is coordinating with telcos who admitted they encountered congestion.
Marami tayong factors to consider. Number one, either yung connection mismo ng individual, kung maganda ba ang kanya nagre-receive ng mga signals. Baka kulang pa na resources.
Globe Telecoms apologized for the glitches and explained that the SIM card registration link went offline Tuesday morning. Globe said they wanted to improve the service. The new SIM card registration portal, new.globe.com.ph/simreg, can now be accessed by subscribers. For subscribers who still fail to register online, Globe will open an on-site assisted registration in February. CICC said they are closely coordinating with telcos to provide free internet access in areas with slow network coverage or no internet access to help the public register. CICC emphasized the need to register SIM cards before 180-day deadline set by the NTC to avoid deactivation.
Ito ay isang tugon ng gobyerno para mabawasan ang ating mga online fraud. Kasi nitong pandemic na halos lahat are online at yun nga lang, kasawing palad, marami nabibiktima. And para sa atin, matulungan naman natin, ma-reduce natin. Hindi ko sinasabing perfect solution. Ma-reduce natin ang ating mga fraudulent activities online.
Mayan Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Telecommunications companies are required by the National Telecommunications Commission, or NTC, to submit incident reports or anomalies encountered during the first day of SIM card registration. In a memorandum, the NTC gave telcos until today, Wednesday, December 28, to submit their reports. The NTC's order was in response to numerous complaints involving unsuccessful or incomplete SIM registrations of the general public. The memorandum directs telcos to include in their reports the platform involved, the number of subscribers affected, geographical areas, and actions taken to address the issues. Telcos are also required to submit the steps taken to mitigate or eliminate further incidents. Initial reports from Globe Telecom said they have registered 20,000 subscribers on the first day of SIM card registration.
The country has logged 32 additional firecracker injuries ahead of the New Year celebration on December 31st. Kim Liana has the details.
4 days before New Year's Eve, the Department of Health has reported 32 cases of firecrackers injuries, 7 of which are new cases from 61 hospitals. The DOH said the number is higher by 39% from the previous year. The DOH is coordinating with concerned agencies and local government units to minimize firecrackers injuries. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergere assured that government hospitals are fully operational for the New Year's celebrations.
But what would be most felt by Filipinos would be our surveillance and our hospitals during the New Year celebration. Nakahanda po ang aming ospital 100%. Kung meron pong mga injuries na mangyayari, andyan po yung mga ospital namin para maagapan natin itong mga injuries na to at hindi na po magkaroon ng mga komplikasyon.
Aside from physical injuries, the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines Incorporated, or PHAPI, also noted the increase in cases of asthma and other respiratory illnesses caused by firecrackers.
Normally po, talagang tumataas po yan, especially yung right after the festivities, yung mga putukan pong yan, kasi dumadami talaga yung pollution because of the mga firecrackers, tumataas talaga. And then ito po ay masama of course dun sa mga may mga asthma, sa mga may respiratory illnesses, Napakagandang tulong din po yung pag-wear natin ng continuously ng mask kahit nanonood lang po tayo ng mga ganyan na mga firecrackers po na show dun sa ating mga local government.
The DOH has partnered with other groups to promote public awareness and provide alternative ways to celebrate the New Year. The DOH reminded parents and guardians to watch their children when using firecrackers. In case of injuries, the agency advised them to rush immediately to the nearest hospital. Kim Liana for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Cases of influenza increased by 45% this year compared to last year. The Department of Health advised the public to self-isolate in case they experience symptoms. Vin Pasqua reports.
The Department of Health, or DOH, has recorded 114,278 cases of influenza-like illness this year. The number is 45% higher compared to those in 2021, with 78,550 flu cases. 29%, or 32,778 cases, are from patients aged 1 to 4 years old, with 446 cases of death because of flu. This year, the Davao region had the most number of flu cases with 23,117, followed by Northern Samar with 12,151, and Calabarzon, or Region 4A, with 10,922 flu cases. The DOH reminds the public not to take lightly flu-like symptoms. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergere says influenza and COVID have similar symptoms.
Nagpapaalala tayo sa ating mga kababayan, ang mga sintomas po ng trangkaso o yung tinatawag nating flu is almost the same as COVID-19.
Vergere advised the public on what to do in case they experience COVID symptoms.
Mag-isolate, tumawag po tayo sa ating mga local health facilities para tayo ay mapatest, para malaman natin talaga kung ito po ay simpleng trangkaso lang o may COVID na tayo.
Then Pasqua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, historic storm brings Buffalo, New York to a halt. China says epidemic situation is predictable and under control. And deadly brain-eating amoeba appears in South Korea. Mata ng Agila International will be right back after the short break.
This portion is brought to you by Final Match Security and Investigation Agency.
Sa special year-end episode ng Counterpoint, babalikan ang mga personalidad na pinag-usapan at mga istorya sa likod ng kontrobersya. Pakinggan ang mga komentaryong walang preno kasama si Atty. Sal Panelo sa Counterpoint, Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi dito sa Net 25.
Sabi niya nga sa akin, Komisar Sal, nung siya po Pangulo, pag ako'y nagigising, tumitingin ako sa kalawakan, sinasabi ko sa sarili ko, ba't ba ako napasok sa trabaho ito?
Hello mga suki! Year 2 na nga ng paborito nating morning habit. Ang ASPN. Kaya naman asahan ang double up the good vibes.
My partner in crime. Ilan ang guess natin? 100? 102. Or 3. Tumpak ka dyan. Tumpak ka dyan.
Mas pinalawak na pagbabalita at mas mainit na talakayan.
Ano na po ang nangyari these past decades? Was there a way for you to verify?
Kasama pa rin ang smart at pretty nanays ng ASPN. Ali Soto at Pat P. Daza. Dito lamang sa Ano sa Palagay Nyo? Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's dance together sa Net 25.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
The news continues here on Mata ng Agila International. In New York, a historic winter storm brings the city of Buffalo to a freezing halt. With hundreds of households affected, city, state, and national officials come together to make the recovery stage more efficient for residents. Melinor Tanhueco reports.
Residents in Buffalo, New York are digging out from a historic storm which began on Thursday. Buffalo was the epicenter of the crisis, buried under more than 4 feet of snow. Temperatures were expected to moderate across the eastern and Midwest United States on Tuesday, after days of freezing weather from the blizzard of the century.
And this blizzard is the one for the ages. Certainly it is the blizzard of the century. And we are here to talk about our collaborative approach to dealing with this crisis.
National Guard members and other teams have rescued hundreds of people from snow-covered cars and homes without electricity, but authorities have said more people remain trapped. At one point on Saturday, nearly 1.7 million customers were without electricity in the biting cold, according to tracker PowerOutage.us. There were still around 50,000 without power midday Monday on the U.S. East Coast. A travel ban remains in effect.
We need people to stay off the roads. You will still get stuck out there. Many streets in the city of Buffalo are still impassable. The driving ban is still in place. Please do not drive in the city of Buffalo.
As of Tuesday, the death toll in Buffalo due to the storm reached 31 fatalities. Governor Hochul is taking steps to ease the financial burdens on New Yorkers impacted by the storm, including making it easier and faster to process insurance claims, urging banks to ease check cashing restrictions, and calling on banks to waive ATM fees and withdrawal limits. She is also asking residents to report businesses selling goods or services for excessive prices. President Joe Biden approved the emergency declaration, which will provide immediate federal assistance to the impacted counties to support the state's ongoing recovery and response operations. Melanor Tanweco, Rochester, New York. Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United States is considering COVID entry restrictions for travelers from China after Beijing dramatically loosened hardline containment measures this month. U.S. officials say there are mounting concerns in the international community about the ongoing COVID-19 surges in China. There is a lack of transparent data being reported from the Asian country. The lack of viral genomic sequence data sparks particular concern. It makes it difficult for public health officials to identify new variants and take prompt measures to reduce the spread. The United States is following the science and advice of public health experts, consulting with partners. It is considering following the example of countries like Japan and Malaysia, which have announced public health measures against travelers from China to counter the spread of COVID.
China on Wednesday said the epidemic situation in the country is predictable and under control as cases continue to grow across the country. A foreign ministry spokesperson said claims in international media that epidemic control efforts in the country have failed are biased smear campaigns and political manipulation with a hidden agenda.
世界各国调整防疫政策时，都会经历适应期。 中国防疫政策换挡也不例外。目前中国疫情形势发展总体在预期和可控之中。北京已最先度过疫情高峰，生产生活正逐步恢复正常。对其他省市可能迎来的疫情高峰，中方相关部门也有着科学评估，进行了必要准备，有充分信心确保调整转段平稳有序推进。
The winter surge comes ahead of major public holidays next month. Millions of people are expected to travel to their hometowns to reunite with relatives. China's Center for Disease Prevention and Control reported 5,231 new COVID cases and 3 deaths nationwide Wednesday. Critics say these figures are a drastic undercount since people are no longer required to declare infections to authorities. The government uses data from online surveys, hospital visits, demand for fever medicines, and emergency calls to make up for shortcomings in officially reported figures. With the country facing shortages of basic medicines, Beijing city authorities plan to distribute the oral COVID drug Paxlovid at local hospitals and community clinics. It remains extremely difficult to obtain for ordinary people. The U.S.-developed treatment was briefly available on e-commerce platform JD.com and delivery platform Meituan in the past few days before both sites ran out of stock.
Health experts say the COVID surge in China is unlikely to impact India. But they urge the public to wear face masks and stay cautious. Recent government data shows India has around 3,400 active coronavirus cases. A critical care expert says the country's low caseload can be largely attributed to the immunity Indians have already gained over the past 3 years. A majority of people also received 2 doses of the vaccine. The country has also stepped up its health monitoring after the COVID infection hike in China. Authorities say travelers from China and 4 other Asian countries must show a negative COVID-19 test result before entering India. They also explain the infection surge in China is expected since there is a susceptible population that is not exposed to the virus.
People in China reacted with joy and rushed to book flights overseas after Beijing said it would scrap mandatory COVID quarantine for overseas arrivals. The move ends almost 3 years of self-imposed isolation. In a snap move late Monday, China said from January 8, inbound travelers would no longer be required to quarantine on arrival. Cases have surged nationwide as key pillars of the containment policy have fallen away. Authorities acknowledge the outbreak is impossible to track. Critics say official case tallies are questionable. Beijing narrowed the criteria by which COVID fatalities are counted last week, a move experts said would suppress the number of deaths attributable to the virus. Still, Chinese social media users reacted with joy to the end of restrictions that have kept the country largely closed off to the outside world since March 2020. Online searches for flights abroad surged on the news. State media reported that travel platform Tongcheng saw an 850% jump in searches and a tenfold jump in inquiries about visas. Rival platform Trip.com group said the volume of searches for popular overseas destinations rose by 10 times year on year within half an hour of the announcement. Users were particularly keen on trips to Macau, Hong Kong, Japan, Thailand, and South Korea. The announcement effectively brought the curtain down on a zero COVID regime of mass testing, strict lockdowns, and long quarantines. The previous restrictions roiled supply chains and stifled business engagement with the world's second largest economy.
South Korean officials or health officials say a man in his 50s died from an infection of a brain-eating amoeba. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, or KDCA, says the patient came back to Seoul after a 4-month trip to Thailand. The man showed symptoms of meningitis, such as headaches, fever, vomiting, slurred speech, and neck stiffness. He was transferred to an emergency room but died on December 21. KDCA says genetic testing on 3 different infections that caused the Agila fowleri was done to determine the cause of his death. Tests revealed the patient's body contained a gene that was 99.6% identical to one discovered in a meningitis patient who had been reported abroad. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says Agila fowleri is an amoeba that lives in soil and warm, fresh waters. It is commonly called the brain-eating amoeba since it causes a brain infection when water containing the amoeba goes up the nose. Health authorities say there is no current treatment for this rare kind of brain infection.
Emergency workers in Galicia, Spain, pull a bus out of the Leres River. It was involved in a crash that killed 7 on Saturday. The bus plunged into the river from a height of nearly 30 meters after crashing through bridge barriers above the river. The investigation began when a passing driver noticed a portion of the safety barrier had disappeared. He told emergency services he feared there had been an accident. Investigators continue to look into the cause of the crash. Only the driver and 1 passenger have survived.
Israeli authorities say they have arrested a suspect in the Jerusalem twin bombings that killed 2 people last month. They report the suspect identifies as a member of the Islamic State group. In a joint statement, the Shin Bet Domestic Security Agency and the Israel police say 26-year-old Aslam Faru lived between Kufr Akab, a neighborhood of Jerusalem, and Ramallah. Faru is an Arab with an Israeli residency card. He is suspected of carrying out the bombing in Jerusalem last month. These were attacks at 2 bus stops. The statement says the suspect acted on his Salafi jihadi ideology, targeting Israeli citizens in Jerusalem. He identifies with the Daesh organization and acted alone after a long period of preparation.
Norwegian Refugee Council, or NRC's regional director Adam Combs says Afghan women staff are essential to carrying out humanitarian work in Afghanistan. This is in response to the Taliban banning female staff in international aid agencies. The NRC has suspended operations in the country.
It's critical to understand the Afghanistan context and our ability and non-ability to work without our female colleagues. And so for us, this is a principled issue and also it's a practical issue. On the principled side, It's very much a case of that it's unacceptable that we're not allowed to have our female staff in place. On a practical side, we actually cannot reach people in need without our female staff.
Combs says this is a temporary suspension. He says that they are working day and night to negotiate and find solutions to the situation. Combs says currently the NRC has 469 female staff in their operations, which is a third of their working force. Several foreign aid groups have announced they are suspending operations in conflict-torn Afghanistan after the Taliban's order. The ban is the latest blow to women's rights in Afghanistan since the Taliban reclaimed power last year.
Up next, U.S. President Joe Biden says ending controversial border policy is overdue. Nicaraguan migrants run into Honduran graft. And Spain axes VAT on basic foodstuff to ease inflation pain. Please stay tuned. Mata ng Agila International will be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders, Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center.
Sa special year-end episode ng Counterpoint, babalikan ang mga personalidad na pinag-usapan at mga istorya sa likod ng kontrobersya. Pakinggan ang mga komentaryong walang preno kasama si Atty. Sal Panelo sa Counterpoint, Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi dito sa Net 25.
Sabi niya nga sa akin, Kumisan Sal, nung siya po Pangulo, pag ako'y nagigising, tumitingin ako sa kalawakan, sinasabi ko sa sarili ko, ba't ba ako napasok sa trabaho ito?
Dear Bosslet, my name is Lizzie. I hate New Year.
Amoy mayaman! Ano ba yan? Hindi na talaga nakakatawa, sakit sa tenga! Ang New Year, dapat fresh start tayo. Kaya New Year, di naman mawawala ng mga problema. Ate, ano ba? Bakit ba ang pala decision mo? Ayoko nga yung mga ganyang pagpaandar na yan!
Love, Bosleng, and Tali. Tuwing linggo, alas 6 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's get together sa Net 25.
This portion is brought to you by Source Alliance.
U.S. President Joe Biden says that ending Title 42 is overdue after the Supreme Court kept in place the disputed measure. It is being used to block migrants and asylum seekers at the tense Mexico border. The Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that Title 42 will remain in place for now. Title 42 is the government's policy of invoking COVID-19 precautions to turn away hundreds of thousands of migrants at the Mexican border. It was enforced under former President Donald Trump in March 2020. The decision to uphold the controversial rule stemmed off a looming political crisis for President Joe Biden. Thousands waited at the southern border in expectation the policy was about to end. But the conservative-dominated High Court accepted a petition from 19 states. The states warned of a surge of migrants crossing the border should the policy be lifted as ordered by a lower court.
The court is not going to decide until June, apparently, and in the meantime, we have to enforce it. But I think it's overdue.
Thousands of Nicaraguans embark on an odyssey to the United States each year in search of a better life. The first hurdle they deal with is a group of corrupt border agents in neighboring Honduras. Fleeing political and economic turmoil, dozens of Nicaraguans depart every day. They leave behind their families and sell off their belongings. They enter into debt, all for the chance at a new start. 42-year-old Jessica Centeno is among dozens of passengers on a bus at the El Guasaude border crossing with Honduras. She is informed she cannot enter Honduras due to a problem with her COVID vaccine certificate. The bus conductor advises her not to argue with the Honduran migration agents. Instead, he tells Centeno to come find him for help. The conductor says everything is solved with money. According to AFP, 20 of the 36 passengers on the bus end up paying $40 each to be allowed to enter Honduras. For Centeno, the fee was $120. That is $40 each for her and her 2 children. Another 5 passengers pay $100 each for alleged problems with their travel documents. In total, the officials net $1,300 from the passengers. The bus conductor acts as an intermediary. A quarter of Nicaraguans live in poverty, and Central America's smallest economy has been stuck in political and economic crisis since 2018. Migrants like Centeno, who wish to escape poverty, say border officials take advantage of the plight of desperate Nicaraguans.
A neighborhood in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, is dreaming of a greener and flood-resistant community. The first step to achieving that dream includes cleaning a creek clogged with garbage, mattresses, clothes, and even refrigerators. Residents of the Catuche district say they want to live in a healthy and beautiful place. They complain, however, that discarded large objects block the stream, and when the river rises, it floods. Experts say there is a need to ensure the banks hold up even in the event of a new flood. One way to achieve this is to make sure they are not reoccupied by houses. Volunteers of the Dream of Catuche Urban Planning Project say there has to be a better relationship between the creek and the neighborhood.
The Spanish government announces a new package of measures worth 10 billion euros or 10.6 billion US dollars. This is to alleviate the cost of living. It includes axing the value-added tax or VAT on basic foodstuffs. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says for 6 months they will reduce VAT on all basic foods from 4% to 0%. The list includes bread, milk, eggs, cheese, fruit and vegetables, and cereals. VAT on oil and pasta will be reduced from 10% to 5%. Sanchez also unveiled a one-off payment of 200 euros or 213 US dollars to families with annual incomes lower than 27,000 euros or 29,000 US dollars. This is meant to offset food prices, costing the Spanish government 4.2 million euros. The new aid plan is the 6th package of measures aimed at responding to the economic and social consequences of the war in Ukraine.
Underneath the calm turquoise waters of eastern Thailand, a rapidly spreading disease is killing corals over vast stretches on the seafloor. Scientists fear it may be getting worse because of climate change. A marine scientist says corals gradually die after being exposed to yellow band disease. As of now, scientists have not come up with a method to stop the proliferation of the bacteria that causes the disease. Scientists admit they don't clearly know the cause of the bacteria, which is why they don't know how to prevent it. No one recognizes the disease. People thought it was coral since both are the same color. Authorities educated the public on the disease after local residents reported the presence of the bacteria almost everywhere. Fishermen are afraid to enter the water, affecting their source of livelihood.
In Uruguay, herdsmen buy horses at auction to fatten them up or sell them for slaughter. But a local nonprofit organization or NGO seeks to give these horses a second chance. Santuarios Primitivo has bought some 250 doomed horses. These horses have been given up for adoption over the last 3 years. Co-founder Pablo Amorin says Santuarios Primitivo has almost 70 sanctuaries nationwide. He describes how they rescue the horses. Before the horses are brought to slaughterhouses, the NGO intercepts them at the tropilleros or herdsmen. The herdsmen are those who fatten them up or fatten up the horses before slaughter. Amorin says when funds are available to buy space to keep the horses, they negotiate with the herdsmen. They purchase as many horses as they can to spare them from slaughter. Adopter of rescued horses Juan Pablo Pio says these animals come to live and spend what is left of their lives somewhere else. Pio says their only mission in the world is to exist. Most horses sent to slaughterhouses are those who have been injured. Coming right up, Russian Prime Minister says weaker ruble will offset exporters' profits. India to present 2036 Summer Olympics bid. And the leader and Nananahimik ang Gabi, big winners on the awards night of MMFF 2022. We bring you more news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
This town is in Old Dubai, and if you are into history and rich culture of a place, then this place is for you.
Working and doing in business in Dubai, I see it's a friendly place and society is open and tolerant. And I think this is the main value, that the prevailing value here in Dubai, tolerance and respect.
Fashion is supposed to be borderless. You don't appreciate the work of a person because of his nationality.
Sabi nila, dito wala kang tapon. From puto kutsinta hanggang dulo, ikaw na yung mag-struggle mamili ngayon kung saan yung babalikan mo.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Mga ka-PSL, ako diay sigab dagangon ng Davao Occidental Tigers. Para sa mainit action, sa hardcourt, tutok lang sa Pilipinas Super League. Ito ang liga ko.
Let's get together. Sunday 25.
We are back to bring you more global news here on Mata ng Agila International. Russia's first deputy prime minister, Andrei Belousov, says a strong ruble has played its role in the country's economy. But now, with companies' revenues dwindling, Belousov asserts it is actually better for Moscow's economy to have a weaker ruble. He believes a range of about 70 to 80 rubles per US dollar is sufficient to offset exporters' profits. Reports say the sanctions on Russian oil have resulted in a weaker ruble. Against the euro, the ruble lost 3.4%, or 76 rubles per euro. And against the yuan, it was down to 3.3%, 10 rubles per yuan.
China has revised its 2021 gross domestic product, or GDP, growth from 8.1% to 8.4%. The size of the GDP was also revised to 114.92 trillion yuan from 114.37 trillion yuan. The National Bureau of Statistics says China's GDP for 2021 was worth around $1.51 trillion. It was dominated by tertiary sector services, mining, manufacturing, and construction industries. Final data from the Bureau shows China's economy grew 3% in the first 9 months of 2022. It is common for many countries to revise their initial GDP estimates due to the large amount of information processed in data construction.
The Federation of German Businesses, or BDI, expects a decline in economic activity during the first quarter of 2023. BDI predicts the first 3 months to only be a slight slump as businesses battle material shortages, the energy crisis, and the struggling global economy. Though business leaders are putting some hopes on China's relaxation of COVID restrictions, they still fear soaring energy prices will dampen worldwide economic progress.
Shiva Ayadurai, the creator of email, voices his interest to be Twitter's CEO. In a tweet to Elon Musk, Ayadurai claims he has founded 7 successful high-tech software companies. He says he holds 4 degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. He asked Musk for details on how to apply for Twitter's CEO post. Ayadurai claims to have invented email as a teenager in 1982. Critics say he is a vocal vaccine skeptic and often criticizing White House medical advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The Indian Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports has announced that India will bid to host the 2036 Olympic Games. The minister stated that the government will work with the Indian Olympic Association to develop a roadmap that would be presented at the International Olympic Committee session in September 2023. The minister mentioned that Ahmedabad, in the country's northwestern state of Gujarat, could host the event. State officials expressed interest in hosting the Olympics on numerous occasions. The next Summer Olympics will be held in Paris in 2024, followed by Los Angeles in 2028 and Brisbane in 2032.
Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Chernyshenko says sporting events like the Olympics are incomplete without Russian athletes. Russian and Belarusian athletes are banned from a wide range of sports tournaments due to the conflict, or the current conflict, in Kyiv. Earlier, the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, vowed it would explore a pathway back for athletes from the 2 countries to participate in the international games. Chernyshenko lauds the IOC's decision, saying common sense in international sporting activities must prevail. He also confirms the Ministry of Sports, the Russian Olympic Committee, and the Foreign Ministry are doing everything possible to remove the restrictions.
Film entries The Leader and Nananahimik ang Gabi topped other films in the Metro Manila Film Festival on its awards night. Here's Nadine Aguilar for the details.
Nadine Lustre was awarded as the Best Actress for her exemplary performance in the psychological thriller Deleter. The film also bagged Best Picture, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects with the MMFF's Best Director, Director Mikhail Red. Nananahimik ang Gabi stars bag awards in the male category. Ian Veneracion as the Best Actor and Mon Confiado as the Best Supporting Actor. The film also won Best Production Design, Third Best Picture, and Best Musical Score. My Father, Myself won the Best Flute on the Parade of Stars, Best Supporting Actress for Dimples Romana, and Best Child Performer for Sean Gabriel. Mama Sapano won Best Screenplay, Best Original Theme Song, and the Fernando Poe Jr. Memorial Award. Meanwhile, the film Family Matters garnered the Gatpuno Antonio J. Villegas Cultural Award. The 8 film entries in the MMFF 2022 will continue to play in Philippine cinemas until January 7, 2023. Nadine Aguilar, reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Congratulations to the winners.
Yes.
And now to help you go through this week, here is a quote from Mia Hamm, a retired American professional soccer player. Take your victories, whatever they may be. Cherish them, use them, but do not settle for them.
Yeah, I guess it's okay to take some time to relish your victory, but then you will know it's time to move forward and aspire for it.
Just don't be too harsh on yourself. You know, learn to celebrate the small wins.
Yep.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Flores. Please stay tuned for tonight's year-end episode of Counterpoint with attorney Salvador Panelo. This is Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.